Welcome to Teyvat Historia. This video is part 2 of all the details and other references I noticed from Genshin Impact's latest Archon questline, Omnipresence Over Mortals. If you've not yet watched part 1, a link will be provided in the description, as well as a direct link in this video's end card. But first, I want to take a moment to talk about this video's sponsor, Wondershare Demo Creator. Demo Creator is an all-in-one screen recorder and video editor for Windows and Mac. If you're interested in capturing those big moments from your favorite games, or editing any other video media, Demo Creator provides a user-friendly and intuitive experience for the entire process. In fact, if you notice something during this video, or any of my future things you may have missed videos, or just something peculiar in-game you'd like to point out, and would like a chance to be featured in an upcoming video, try using Demo Creator to create and then submit your details or questions to teyvathistoria@gmail.com. Using their software, you can easily utilize one of 3 different recording options. New recording and screen recording both will record anything on screen at the time, but the new recording option enables on-screen drawing. The record game option is optimized for recording as the name suggests, and will record games at a chosen FPS while minimizing its impact on your system performance. Alternatively, you can simply submit a short video of yourself asking a question. Demo Creator provides all of the primary necessities every content creator needs, such as cropping, and speeding up or slowing down your footage for those details you'd like to highlight in slow motion. Last, but certainly not least, Demo Creator has a rich effects store from which you can download all sorts of video effects and transitions. If your clip is chosen, I'll feature it in one of my upcoming videos, and it is my plan to feature many of your questions as time goes on. Wondershare Demo Creator is a fantastic entry you can use to get your feet wet in the content creator space and score a chance to be featured here on the channel. Then, use the download link in the description to get started. I'll begin this video with Sayu. After she returns from finding the documents which provide proof of the Kujo clan's collusion with the Fatui, Sayu mentions being tired from the ordeal, but in particular, she also states that she feels dizzy and that everyone is spinning, likely a tongue-in-cheek reference, making light of the fact that Sayu's best mode of traversal involves spinning, a feat for which even she doesn't appear to be immune to the effects of. After Sara confronts Kujo Takayuki, she heads off to bring this information directly to the ears of the Shogun, leaving no soldier unscathed along the way to pass along this information. I've seen a lot of commentary regarding how Sara was dealt with by Signora off-screen, some even suggesting that Shogun's current Tengu general was killed by the 8th of the Fatui Harbingers. However, given that Sara's vision is still bright and clearly showing her electro alignment, she clearly wasn't killed by Signora in this scene. Plus, if you completed Kokomi's questline, Warrior's Dream Like Spring Grass, she plays a role there, in a time where the armies of the Shogun and Watatsumi Island are discussing how to accomplish peace. The next point to discuss revolves around Signora. The traveler, tired of hearing Signora go on and on about how superior she believes she is, results in one of the few times in the main story the traveler actually speaks, issuing a challenge before the throne of Inazuma. Signora, ever confident in her abilities, knows she carries within her a power unknown to most. But if you're the type to dig into the game's extended lore, the artifact sets, Pale Flame and Crimson Witch of Flame, include the details of the story of a woman from Mondstadt who traveled to Sumeru to study during the Age of Cataclysm 500 years ago. When she returned to Mondstadt during the Cataclysm, she found that her loved one, Rostam, also known as the Wolf Pup, had been killed in the ongoing battle. In her rage, she brought death and destruction to the dark beasts of the Alchemist Gold. In time, she sacrificed her body entirely to become the embodiment of liquid flame. This would lead her to being known to some as the Crimson Witch. Now, going back to Tenchukaku, when Signora transformed via her icy cocoon, in a not-so-subtle nod to the ongoing theme of the moth, which Signora's character has represented for some time, we're given direct confirmation of Signora's forgotten name, as she tells the traveler to witness her suffering. Additional details supporting the connection are provided via the funeral mask, rewarded to you upon her defeat. While Signora certainly seemed confident in her Crimson Witch form, she does have a handful of voice lines that suggest she doesn't much care for that title, sounding more than just a little annoyed by the use of the word witch.
Call me a witch!
This is part of the continued suffering of Rosalind's spirit, enduring after 500 years. By letting go of the icy shield of her delusion, the hatred and rage that swells within is released. In addition to the deep lore clues, we were given some other hints to Signora's past during her first on-screen appearance back in 1.0. although at that time we did not have the context to understand fully what we were witnessing. In that scene, Signora referred to Barbatos as Mondstadt's rodent ruler, clearly talking down to the Animo Archon. This may be indication that in her view, Barbatos did not involve himself in the events of the Cataclysm in such a way that her former love Rostam would have been spared a horrible death at the hands of the Dark Beasts, and as such holds a personal resentment towards the Animo Archon. Also interesting to note here is that while she's long held this grudge, she hypocritically calls out the Traveler for holding one themselves for her attack against Venti. Further interactions with Signora during this scene can be clarified if digging into the pale flame's stainless bloom. It describes the woman consumed by fire, given a new form by the first of the Fatus. This is a reference to Signora and possibly the first of the 11 Harbingers. If you're watching this video, it's not news to you that Signora was executed by Raiden Shogun, as agreed upon by custom following her duel with the Traveler. However, I have a sneaking suspicion that this is not the last we'll see of the Fair Lady of the Fatui. For in the Teyvat timeline trailer, we are not shown the face of Pulcinella. But if we think back to Venti's words in 1.0, which struck a clear nerve with Signora,
That smirky wear looks out of place. Did you steal it from your master's face?
they suggest that Venti knew even then that Rosalind's original physical form had long been burned away, and that the face she wears today is not her own. It may be possible that they chose to hide Pulcinella's appearance, as it could be the same as Signora's, which may also in turn be the same as the Cryo Archon herself. Or maybe I'm overthinking it. Time will tell. Staying with Signora for now. This one isn't as much a lore detail, but rather commentary on the effectiveness of the musical scoring in this scene. As a traveler defeats the 8th of the Fatui Harbingers, Signora's theme fades back in as she grapples with the reality of loss and the power the traveler wields, which she cannot understand. Then the Shogun's theme begins to play, overpowering Signora's theme as if to match the Shogun's resolve to see the result of the duel respected. Signora's theme returns once again as she gets to her feet, and the depth of her situation is properly realized.
Nayan diplomat, you know what happens if you lay a finger on me. Swear, if you strike
Her
me,
theme
I will
remaining
make
strong
sure.
throughout her last moments of defiance, as her final moment draws near.
Precious Inazuma! Stop! I order you! And you! Filthy rats! All of you!
As a final note during this scene, the Shogun states that due to respecting the outcome of the duel, she will allow the traveler to leave Tenchukaku alive, which she does, until the literal moment our traveler crosses the threshold of the Tenchukaku Palace gates. She strikes once more to remove her perceived threat against eternity. So in the strictest of senses, she did uphold her promise of allowing the traveler to leave the palace, but not a single step further. Okay, so I think I would be completely remiss if I did not talk about this scene. Here, the masterless vision of Kazuha's lost friend comes to life. Though it might be obvious to everyone in the moment, the implications here might not be. Kazuha actually did briefly wield the power of his friend's vision, meaning that the traveler is not the only one capable of using two elements without a delusion. This means that the powers of Celestia are not locked to a single element per user. Perhaps it is even possible that along our journey, we will discover a character or two who has been awarded more than a single vision for their life's ambition. We discover later that A is more than aware of the Vision Hunt decree, and even approves of its implementation. She very much understands that ambition brings about change, which is what the decree itself is intended to stop. She mentions that people have more to lose by chasing their dreams, and that no one will lose their life by having their visions taken away. This is an obvious example of Yae Miko's statement that A's eternity is defined by loss, which I discussed in the previous video. While A may not know the full scale of death and loss occurring outside of her meditative plane, in her own way, she thought that by preventing the people's pursuit of dreams and ambitions, she might spare them the hardships and loss she herself experienced in the years prior to her isolation. She even goes on to say that those who have been lost are the ones who insisted on pursuing their own aspirations, to which the traveler cannot deny, and draws an immediate parallel to Tepe. So while many of us expected the Shogun to be unconditionally redeemed during this questline, it seems that MiHoYo has chosen to blur the line between good and bad here, and A herself has largely only been indirectly responsible for the deaths of those who would duel before the throne. When the traveler arrives inside A's plane of Euthymia for the second time, Yae Miko is summoned to interrupt the fight, and finally clarifies what happened when the traveler first laid eyes on the statue of the omnipresent god. The ambitions of the people of Inazuma were passed on to our travelers so that their collective power could be used to show A the error of her ways. Never is that clearer than in this blink and you'll miss it moment, where the traveler is replaced briefly with the form of Tepe just before we hear his voice.
We can abolish the Vision Hunt decree.
His ambition is with the traveler, giving us confirmation of the fate of the Resistance's best samurai captain logistics master. Further confirmation arrives at the end of the quest, as it shows Kokomi saying her goodbyes to Tepe whilst standing in front of the house he was staying in for his part of the questline. Unless of course Tepe is actually still alive and he's just off somewhere wearing a bad mustache disguise. Anyways, there were quite a few interesting details to pick out during A's cutscene, which followed her loss to the traveler. It depicts events which include the loss of her friends, and what appears to be the miasma which spawned during the Archon War as a result of the defeated gods. Among those includes what appears to be the mask of Megu Kenki. Here we discover that the form A saw in the trailer Raiden Shogun Nightmare was not herself in the past, but rather her sister Makoto, who despite being the Electro Archon at that time, was not a fighter like her sister A. Sadly, she too would be counted among the many loved ones the path to eternity stole from A. Next we're shown that the loss of Makoto was the straw that broke the camel's back for A. She vowed to stop the change, beginning first with her own physical form, building the puppet that we know today as the Raiden Shogun, and using the technique of bonding her soul to the sword that once belonged to her sister, as taught to her by Yae Miko. She isolated herself within her plane of Euthymia to prevent her mind from being eroded by time, or possibly even something worse. In this way, she can ensure the eternity her loved ones died for could be realized from a safe location. The sword the Shogun uses during the Misono Hitotachi, called the Miso Ishin, is actually a sword which I mentioned once belonged to the original Electro Archon, Makoto, or the one the nation of Inazuma correctly knew as Ball. We've since learned in the Shogun story details that at that time, the blade was not sharp, because Ball was not a fighter, and it was merely used for decoration. You can see in this scene, Makoto is depicted holding the sword, while A is shown in her reflection, used in this instance to show how A acted as her shadow, her bodyguard, dressed in dark tones, wielding her traditional polearm instead. As we learned from Yae Miko, most in Inazuma have no idea that Ball actually died during the cataclysm of 500 years ago, and in fact, A simply acted as if she was Ball when in battle, so most never even knew that she existed at all. And tragically, when A lost her sister, almost nobody even knew it happened, and thus, no one in Inazuma would mourn the death of her sister, except her. In this scene, we are briefly shown a shot of what is likely to be the cat which belonged to Kazua's lost friend. If so, it's a welcome relief, and it's nice to have a canon confirmation that it's still around, and that Kazuha has returned to Inazuma to look after it. The final onslaught of lore details comes from the conversation with Yae Miko at the sacred Sakura tree. There is where we learn of her surprising surrender of A's gnosis in order to save the traveler from the Balladeer. I believe Miko is simply playing dumb here in the moment, acting as if she did not truly understand the importance of the gnosis. But it's more likely that she, as usual, knows much more about what's going on than it appears, and decided that the traveler's life was more valuable than whatever power might be gained by retaining a gnosis, which isn't even desired by the Electro Archon anymore. Sadly, however, as a result of this interaction, we will not be shown what the Electro Gnosis looks like for the foreseeable future. Miko tells us the puppet that represents the will of the Raiden Shogun was built utilizing technology which has been lost to time. But curiously, there is another in the land which appears to be using a similar technology, and is active in every major nation of Teyvat that we've seen thus far. The one I'm speaking of course, is Catherine from the Adventurers Guild, a character who has a surprising keyhole in the back of her neck, and often finds herself either rebooting or in error.
Rebooting.
And there's also Scarmosh and Albedo. Also, during the final conversation with Yayumiko, Paimon makes mention that Zhongli told us Ball had passed away, when in reality, this isn't exactly what was said. How easy it is to forget that during the 1.1 story quest, it was Ganyu who informed the traveler that 5 of the original 7 had passed away, and that the 2 survivors were indeed just Zhongli and Barbados. Zhongli, when speaking of Ball, only told us to go and find her in Inazuma. At this time, I'm uncertain if this was just a simple translation error, in which they mistakenly swapped the name of the correct character, or if they're intending to indicate that there's a scene we simply haven't been shown which took place. For now, we can't really say for sure, but Venti's new post 2.1 voice lines suggest that the other Archons obviously knew that Ball and Beelzebul were twin gods, and that the one who served as Ball's body double, A, is now the Electro Archon. They seem to have left this little detail out when sending us on our way. Among one of the more crucial details we learn from Yayumiko is the reveal of the Dendro Archon, or the God of Wisdom's name, as she mentions the Lesser Lord, Kusanali, telling us that Lesser Lord is a term of endearment, suggesting that the people of Sumeru, like in the other nations of Teyvat thus far, both love and revere their Archon, despite the fact that some extremely questionable and dark dealings with the Fatui have been taking place there for several years. If the Sumeru Archon questline is actually going to address much of the events from the manga, many characters, including Sino, Amber, Lisa, and Kole, will come into focus in what is likely to be one of Genshin Impact's darkest story threads. And that's it for the details I noticed from Genshin Impact's 2.1 questline, Omnipresence Over Mortals. Did you notice anything I missed? Be sure to @ me on Twitter @TeyvatH, or use the Demo Creator 14-day free trial in the description to create and edit a clip pointing out a detail, or asking a question for a chance to be featured in one of my next Things You Might Have Missed videos. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the bell icon so that you're notified when my next video goes live. Thanks for watching Teyvat Historia. May the 7 guide you, travelers. So while many of us expected the Shogun to be unconditionally redeemed during this questline, it seems that Mihoyo has chosen to